electric vehicle space. We're going to talk about the latest automaker ponying up and what's into India and its plans when it comes to EVs. That's coming up.
Now your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
For the rest of the afternoon, it's breezy with sunshine and occasional high clouds and warm temperatures mostly in the 70s. Outside, mainly cloudy and breezy and mild, around 60 midtown. 40s and 50s are out towards the suburbs. Coming up on Wednesday, becoming partly sunny, breezy. A warmer day, too, near 80 on Wednesday. Wednesday night, clear skies about 60 to 65. And Thursday, mostly sunny skies and 80 to 85. This is Gary Best with the 3-day forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
All this week, Bloomberg Surveillance is live from Washington, D.C.
We're having this conversation with really smart people.
With full coverage of the IMF and World Bank spring meetings.
These meetings, even with the banking crisis in place, are really, really important.
The IMF meets amid surging interest rates and financial instability.
How slow could global growth get?
You could have a global recession. Bloomberg Surveillance, live from D.C. Tomorrow, starting at 7 a.m. on Bloomberg 1130 and Bloomberg Television.
This is your daily reminder from Innovation Refunds. During COVID, caregivers at nursing homes worked long, stressful hours to support the most vulnerable people. The owner of an assisted living facility used a payroll tax refund to pay bonuses to their caregivers who had stayed with the company during the pandemic. The refunds brought my employees closer to me, said Hal Cranmer, owner of Paradise for Parents. I can't thank Innovation Refunds enough. Learn more about Hal's ERC journey at innovationrefunds.com.
Join Bloomberg and Autodesk on April 25th for Design and Make, an event bringing together the world's most creative minds to discuss how their respective industries are responding to a world in flux. Speakers include executives from Ymca Group and Atelier 100. How are those on the cutting edge of design and manufacturing, shining a light on the innovative solutions that can make the world better, smarter, and more sustainable through good design? Learn more at BloombergLive.com/designandmake2023.
Bridge Bank helps breakthrough ideas actually break through and remains dedicated to providing financial solutions to the risk takers, the game changers, and the disruptors, those committed to making the world a better place. Bridge Bank has been providing financial solutions to technology and innovation companies from inception to IPO and beyond for over 2 decades through its national network of banking teams and offices. Bridge Bank, a division of Western Alliance Bank, member FDIC. Bridge Bank, be bold, venture wisely.
Geopolitical risk, changing regulation, economic uncertainty. EY can help you identify the risks that matter. When it comes to the complexities you're facing, it isn't just about the numbers. To keep ahead of changing business needs and evolving regulations, CFOs, boards, and audit committees need critical insights to make better decisions. For more insights that matter, visit ey.com/beyond the numbers.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash. It's 4:21 on Wall Street. We check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. Late day fade on the S&P 500 index, ending the day unchanged at 4108. The Dow today up 98 points, higher by 0.3%. Nasdaq down 52, a decline of 0.4%. Stocks were subdued, trading in a narrow range as investors brace for inflation data. CPI report coming out tomorrow morning, 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time. Complete coverage, of course, here on Bloomberg Radio. That report, though, could signal that the Federal Reserve will once again be lifting interest rates. 10-year yield, 3.42%, with a 2-year, 4.03%. Bitcoin, a major market story today, rallying 3.2%, but back above the psychological $30,000 level. Bitcoin at $30,079 right now. Crude oil up 2.2%, $81.48 a barrel. Spot gold, $2,000 the ounce, up by 0.6%. So again, recapping, S&P ends the day unchanged. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. What are we calling that? Flagging? Flagging or something. What was it? All right, interesting market day. We're just kind of marking time here. Hey, not marking time is the money going into the EV space because it continues to roll in. Last month we talked about VW boosting its rolling 5-year spending plan by 13% to $193 billion, more than 2/3 going to software and EVs. Today, Hyundai Motor committing to spend around $18 billion by 2030 in its shift to electric cars. So let's get to it. Another edition of Bloomberg Plugged In, our weekly look at the world of EVs. And back with us is Bloomberg Technology co-host Ed Ludlow in our Bloomberg 960 studio in San Francisco. Ed, you know, there's lots of questions about the outlook, what kind of recession, what do global central banks do, but man, those automakers continue to plow money into the EV space.
Yeah, and I've been really excited to catch up with you because I think for once it's been weeks and a lot's happened, you know, like a lot of data, a lot of news around the world of electric vehicles. What's really exciting about it is so much of it is outside the United States. You know, we could start with India, for example, which is just a market that's so different. You know, you guys out there in New York, I'm in California. We're used to the idea that consumers drive their own four-wheel cars everywhere, normal. India is a completely different market, and what's changed there is the investment that's gone into vehicles of all types, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, buses, and, you know, there's just a really astonishing piece from our colleagues at Bloomberg New Energy Finance who just basically went away, aggregated all the data sets, and the headlines are such that EVs across all vehicle types doubled in India in 2022. Now the data's in, and when it comes to passenger car sales, they tripled. And there's a lot to discuss around the reasons why, but that's a really interesting data set when you consider that actually it's not the United States that's driving an electrification transition. You have to look actually globally and look at some really interesting markets.
Is it because I have to transition? Like, what is it about India in particular?
Yeah, look, there's certainly government support in a market like India. The government put in place a subsidy of around $3.5 billion, which was designed to encourage domestic manufacturing. But it kind of comes down to this really simple idea. There's 1 billion people in India, and many of them take transport outside of that passenger car space. There are many more models available. You see the ride-hailers. There are many different startups out there doing food delivery who are using electric vehicles because the cost of operating them is actually, in many cases, more operationally efficient than relying on gas. And, you know, rising interest rates, the rising cost of fuel in 2022 was a major story that hit all economies around the world.
Hey, Ed, you were talking about how it's important to look globally, and obviously you were mentioning India. What other corners, when we're looking globally, who's winning when it comes to this EV battle versus those who are losing and are lagging behind?
You know, Tesla's still the market incumbent in many geographies. I think the piece of news that caught my eye in the last 24 hours is kind of some fighting talk from Hyundai in South Korea, right? They are making this commitment of around $18.2 billion to electrify. By 2030, they want to have 31 electric models across both Hyundai and their sister company Kia. You have to compare and contrast that number. Is $18 billion of capital commitment to electrify a lot by 2030? Well, by comparison, Ford is committing almost double that to electrifying by 2026. GM has a $30 billion commitment by 2025. So actually what we see here in the United States is some of those automakers much more aggressive with shorter term deadlines, much bigger pockets of money. But for Hyundai, they do have an ambition of being the 3rd biggest seller of EVs in the world, and they've at least given us a sense of what they're willing to pledge to make that happen.
Hey, how do you think about it, Ed, broadly? President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, as you know, requires car makers to build EVs in the U.S. in order to be eligible for subsidies. Is that going to be enough to get non-U.S. automakers to create facilities here, or will they just not worry about getting that subsidy?
So it's a really interesting case study in Hyundai's case, because currently, while they do have some manufacturing facilities in North America, they're not for electric vehicles. The basics of the Inflation Reduction Act require manufacturers to have their electric vehicles manufactured in the United States, but also have a majority component base and raw material base from within the United States. what you see from Hyundai is them saying, well, hold on, we're starting from a pretty low base here. We don't even have a factory right now in the US that's building EVs, and they're pushing back to some concessions. You have to remember the goal of the IRA is also to onshore manufacturing, not just protect supply chain.
Right.
But it's a big political issue as well. Look at what Ford has done with Chinese factory partners like CATL, for example, a politically controversial move in the context of the IRA.
And Ed, you brought up Tesla, so I wanted to bring up this story that Carol was looking at as well in the terminal in recent days, and looking at how Elon Musk has been deepening its China investment amid obviously these growing trade tension. How difficult and, I guess, tricky of a situation is he putting himself in when you're thinking about Tesla, the U.S., versus obviously that what on the other side of things when it comes to the strength in China?
He's like, oh, I don't care, I'm just going to do it.
Right. Yeah. It's politically tricky. What we know, the news of the week is that Tesla is going to build a second facility in Shanghai, which is a battery facility, alongside the existing car plant it already has and wholly owns. This battery facility is important because in China there's great demand for energy storage products, not just battery cells that go into cars. So you can see them serving that demand. In fact, the kind of pledges in terms of ramping battery output in China far exceeds the investment plans that across all players we have here in the United States. Where it gets more tricky is where do those products end up, right? And, Tesla, again, we've reported that they've been kind of communicating with the White House their intention to build a battery facility here in America with CATL. What we understand from the sources is they would wholly own the factory and license technology designs from CATL. But with Republicans in particular, that's a hard sell. And with Biden, it's a hard sell because it's contrary to the ambitions of the IRA. But it's very hard to navigate. In China, for example, Shanghai accounted for 50% of all the EVs Tesla built last year. There's big demand in that market domestically, so it doesn't really matter how it's perceived in the US. But some of those were exported to other markets as well. That said, it's just one part of Tesla's strategy to add dozen facilities or so by the end of the decade all over the world.
President Biden, was it just this week or recently, he's kind of even leading bigger into electric cars, and he really wants consumers to ramp up. Is this going to make a difference? Because I got to say, I've been looking at electric cars for a long time. Initially it was hybrids, then it was EVs, and I'm not quite sure what I'm waiting for. The infrastructure, prices to come down, more selection. But I do wonder what it really takes here.
Yeah, there's been multiple facets to the story so far this year. Really quickly, one has been, automakers chasing the tails of others. So Tesla cut prices and all other automakers cut prices. And part of their reasoning of the time was to make their cars compliant with what they thought were the terms of the Inflation Reduction Act so that they would be eligible for those incentives. Remember, there was a price cap, which in layman's terms meant you can't just make super expensive electric SUVs. You can't just do that and then hope that the price is brought down by a federal credit. The idea is that they wanted to set the bar much lower, make EVs more accessible. That's one part of the story. The other is just consumer choice, right? Many more models makes for healthier competition. Competition makes for pricing adjustments, which is more attractive to the consumer. Right. And that was a big part of the story we just discussed in India. All over the world, there's more consumer choice.
And you brought up how Tesla has been having these different price cuts multiple times this year. What are analysts saying as far as the slowing demand there and how much of a problem that could potentially be still for Tesla?
Yeah, look, we go into first quarter earnings a little bit worried about margins based on analyst notes. If you cut prices, then the impact can be to the bottom line. That said, Elon Musk has been pretty clear and consistent about this. They're willing to sacrifice profit at Tesla to maintain the growth rate of near to 50% annual growth. In other words, we might not make as much money on our vehicles, but we want to sell more and more of them basically everywhere. And Tesla, more than any other automaker, can use the lever of price cuts to do that. We found clear evidence in the first 3 months of this year that cutting prices unlocks new pockets of demand for Tesla. And so wouldn't be a surprise to see them do it even more in the coming months.
Mr. Ludlow, do you have an EV? I can't remember what I asked you.
I don't, and I've been really honest about this on Twitter, that when I looked for a car 6 months ago, it wasn't an option for us. It might be now, but at that time, the wait time for Tesla was nuts, or the EV was outside of my price range.
I know, we're all waiting for some of those prices to come down. Don't stay away. Don't be a stranger. Really good to do that roundup with you. Our Ed Ludlow, of course, co-host of Bloomberg Technology at Bloomberg News. You can catch him on Bloomberg Technology noon on Bloomberg TV daily with Carolyn Hyde. You are listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Masterlow with Jess Metton, but let's head off to Nancy Lyons. She's out in D.C. She's going to check on world and national news. Take it away, Nan.
Thanks, Carol. Louisville police will be releasing body cam footage later today of yesterday's shooting at Old National Bank. 5 people were killed, as well as the shooter himself, who was an employee at the bank. Police say he bought the AR-15 rifle used in the attack legally. Louisville Mayor Craig Greenberg says he's committed to finding ways to combat gun violence.
The laws we have now are enabling violence and murder. It's time to change those laws.